Now, when Gerald Durrell landed at the airport and took Npongo out of his crate and drove back to the zoo, Npongo was sitting on his lap. And Durrell noticed that Npongo took a keen interest in the cows that they passed and occasionally turned around also for a look of appreciation from Durrell's face. Then, when he reached his house, he carried Npongo to his flat because the cage was not ready where he would be keeping Npongo. So he decided that he would be keeping Npongo in their guest room for few days. Now from here we can refer to the title of the chapter, that is A Gorilla in the Guest Room. So the gorilla is Npongo and the guest room is the guest room of Durrell's flat. Now you will see that Npongo's grave and courteous manner and sad expression won over both his wife and his mother. Grave meaning serious and courteous meaning extremely polite. So he was not an animal that was, disturbing the family. Rather, he was so courteous, so well behaved and polite that the family readily accepted him. Then he became comfortable in the sofa and he became comfortable on the sofa and then he was given many delicacies. Delicacies meaning very good food. The staff came upstairs and they visited and they had paid homage. Homage means respect. They have shown that they have also accepted and adored Npongo. And Npongo in this while entire time, he behaved as if he is some black potentate. Potentate meaning monarch or ruler, who has absolute power, autocratic power. Then Gerald Durrell was very much worried because he had previously a chimpanzee in his house whose name was Chumley. And he was worried that just as Chumley, used to move around everywhere, in the same way, if Npongo also moves around any place, anywhere, and he might, break off things, by accidentally put things in the wrong place or do some kind of a mishap. So Durrell was very much worried about Npongo's presence in the guest room. But Npongo was very, very gentle and had a very good behavior. He would be mostly lying on the sofa, and when he became bored sitting on the sofa, then he would be strolling around in the room. Like just as someone strolls around in the museum, similarly he would stroll around the room. And over here in the chapter, it is mentioned as if he is like a small black professor. Why is the word professor mentioned here? Because professor as if means he has great knowledge about all the things that he is, seeing, looking at in the room. And he did not do any damage to any of the things that was kept in the room. So Durrell was also captivated by this beautiful behavior of Npongo. And then, apart from a slight hiatus meaning a pause or a break. And what was the break? That he would wet the floor occasionally, because we have to remember that he was after all a baby gorilla. So apart from that, Npongo's behavior was exemplary. Exemplary means perfect. And the mother and the wife did their best to try to persuade Durrell to keep Npongo permanently in their house and not in his cage. Now, what were the wrong things that he did? These were like, baby, like a baby behaves. Same way the baby gorilla has behaved. Like, what has he done? There was a map of Japan that was drawn by one of the more inebriated, drunk or intoxicated ancient mariners. So what has Npongo done? He has made it scarlet. Scarlet means bright red. How did he make the map bright red? Now Npongo had consumed tinned raspberries. And after consuming the raspberries, his hands had the color, had the tint of the raspberries, and what he has done, he has gone and put his hand all over that map of Japan. So now the map of Japan has also become red. So what did he do? He had, in his enthusiasm, he had added his diet, the proof of whatever he had had in his diet in the map of Japan. Now because of Npongo's stay in the guest room and of doing all the things, hovering around in the floor, and the floor had to be always cleaned with a vacuum cleaner. Okay, so there was a lot of sound, so all the guests who were coming in the house, they had to apologize to the guests that because of the sounds and because of all the things being scattered here and there. Another time, what did Npongo do? He knew that if you pull the handle, it will be closed, and if you pull the handle, the door will again open. Now what did Npongo do? He had tried to open and close the door, play with the handle of the door, and in that situation, he has pulled the handle so hard that it had bent down because he had used all his strength. And at this juncture, Gerald Darrell realized that Npongo was only about 2 years old. And his strength was more. Okay, the strength of his body was more than his size. Though he was, a small baby gorilla, but he had a lot of strength in his body. Another thing which made Darrell quite captivated about Npongo was that when a baby chimpanzee would be brought out of its cage, the chimpanzee would be happy. But when it would be, sent back to the cage, it would behave like the loquacious heroines in a Greek tragedy. Okay, crying and trying to tear up the hair, rolling with rage on the floor, that it does not want to go back to its cage, screaming at the top of its voice, drumming the heels. But Npongo did not do like this. He would come out, and then although he would deplore, he would condemn the fact, he would not accept it in a positive way that he has to again be put back in the cage. He would accept the necessity of being locked up in the cage. So he would come out of the cage. He would not like to go back to the cage, but he would not be behaving like any heroine, or he would not create any drama. He would try his best to divert the master so that the master does not put him back in the cage. But when he was forced to be in the cage, he would go back to the inevitable. That is, what is certain to happen, what will definitely happen. So it was inevitable that he had to go back to his cage. So he would go back to his cage, he would submit to his master and to his fate of being locked in the cage. Sometimes he would protest, but that would be only faintly peevish screams. When he would see that the master has locked him in the cage and has gone away. At that point of time, he would make some screams that the master is going away. The caretaker is going away. But the average Npongo, in a very short period of time, became the darling of the zoo. Everybody loved him. And every fine afternoon he was brought out to the lawn. So over there he would show off to his admirers, by doing various tricks, like making some bored expression on his face, or showing a wicked gleam in his eye, or working out, or just posing for the photographs. Sometimes he would try to pull someone's leg or push it from under him, because that would give him an immense amusement. While the visitor, who would be, the unlucky one, would be having some slip disc or would fall down sometimes. And within 12 months, Npongo doubled his size. And now, Daryl felt that he has to find a mate for Npongo. Now Daryl started wondering that how he can find another gorilla who would be good for Npongo. Because he sees that the problem if the gorilla is a young one, then there would be no problem in making the gorilla become friend with Npongo. But once any gorilla or chimpanzee or orangutan is a arboreal ape that lives in trees mostly, and it has long red hair, long arms, and such species of animals, when they are at the age of 3 or 4, they would start to play with their caretaker by pulling the leg or jumping onto the back of the neck, only to test the stamina of their mate, because that person is the only companion of their with whom they can play. So if Npongo is left on his own, he is a nice-natured ape. He will play games, he will try to entertain you. But when this same gorilla would be 11 or 12, you might have a broken leg or a broken neck by playing with him, trying to play with him, because he would be very, very strong. So Daryl thought that it is better that he finds a playmate for Npongo, otherwise Npongo might. So Daryl wanted another mate for Npongo so that he does not become morose and melancholy, and also he does not become a lonely anthropoid. Anthropoid meaning ape. So he decided to try and procure means obtain with care and effort. So, to obtain with care and effort a good and nice mate for Npongo, who could be his wife. So, he again telephoned the dealer from whom he got Npongo and asked if there was a female gorilla that he could get. And then the animal dealer told him that they had one female gorilla who was 1 year younger to Npongo, but the price was 1,500 pounds because of a political situation in Africa. The prices had increased. Now Daryl was thinking that how he could afford the younger gorilla, and then he again, after 2 days of searching for the money and not being able to obtain the money, he called the dealer and asked whether he could buy the gorilla in installment terms, and the animal dealer agreed and said that his representative would bring the female gorilla to Jersey in a week's time. The whole zoo waited for that day with bated breath. Bated breath means nervous breath. And then Daryl, what did he do? He made a collecting box and hung it near the zoo with a notice which read that they had bought Nandi on installment plan. So, if it was possible for others, then they should contribute him with some money to keep up the installments. Then Nandi arrived, crouched in a crate. Crouched means bent upon her knees. And she was small, much smaller than Npongo. But she appeared in perfect condition, just like Npongo. Her fur was glossy, she was fat, and her skin had a sheen like satin. Sheen meaning shine. But what impressed Daryl the most about Nandi, the female gorilla, was her eyes. Now there's a comparison between Npongo's eyes and her eyes. Npongo's eyes were small and deep set, always calculating, always full of humor, while Nandi's eyes were just the opposite. Npongo's were small and deep set, Nandi's were large and lustrous, very shining, and she looked sideways when she looked. The whites in her eye could be seen. But they were not humorous or humored eyes. They were rather frightened eyes, and she would never look directly at someone. Her eyes showed that she did not trust or respect human beings. And when she was released from her cage, Darrell understood why she was not very comfortable with human beings around her. Because right across the top of her skull, there was a scar meaning a mark of some deep wound. And it was 6 or 7 inches in length. And he understood that some fearless human being had given her a blow with a machete. Machete is a broad, rough, heavy knife which is used as a weapon. And because of this blow, her scalp had split. Just like, if you would put a razor in someone's scalp and it would split and start bleeding, it was same for her scalp. And he thought that if it would be a very hard blow, it could have been that her skull would be split into 2. Now, if she got such an introduction to the human race, you could hardly blame why she was little antisocial. Now, this great slash, meaning this wound, was completely healed. But there was the long white scar that could be seen through the hair of her head. And he realized why she was little antisocial, little, away from the humans or the human touch. Now, they kept Nandi in a separate cage for 24 hours so that she could be comfortable. But the cage was kept next to Npongo to enable her to see her mate and her future husband. But she was not very comfortable in her new surroundings. If you tried to talk to her and look directly at her face, her eyes would slide from side to side. And she would only give one glance, one look, slight look at you, but she would not directly look at you. Sometimes she would even turn her back. When she understood that the surroundings were harmless and nobody could harm her from the back, she had a very sad, frightened face. And it looked that she lacked comfort. She lacked love and care. And if someone would have hurt her, that would be the last thing she would have appreciated. And then it took at least 6 months for them to gain her confidence. Then one day they let her in the cage with Npongo, and that was a red letter day. Red letter day means everybody had marked that day in the calendar. It was a very, very important day, and everybody was fraught with anxiety, filled with anxiety, because Npongo and Nandi both were to be kept in the same cage. How would they react to each other's presence? And Npongo had by now become a very fearfully extroverted character, extroverted, outgoing. And he obviously considered that he was the only gorilla in the world and all the human beings were his friends. But now that he would see another gorilla